Welcome back. My name is Jasper Sonnevelt. I work as an agile coach for Zebia in Holland. So I'm not from Scandinavia. I'm here to hold back on the invasion, although it doesn't sound as scary if you look at Legos. I'd like to share some of my experiences with you guys. I do a lot of consulting for both very big organizations and very small organizations. And the smaller organizations are typically a little bit easier. The bigger organizations are more fun to talk about. So I'll share a little bit with you guys today about a large governmental organization where I did a project, and I did some coaching, and we tried to start very small and then work our way out into the rest of the organization. But this is government. So this is, in Holland, government is pretty bureaucratic, political, slow. In Italy too. In Italy too? So you might recognize some stuff. So what I've done today is I've mixed in some of the case study with some of the stuff I got from books, and I tried to show you guys how it actually worked, what we tried, and what the thing was that we tried to accomplish. So a little bit about the project we were doing. So this is we were building a document management system, or the team was building a document management system. I coach. I don't do any actual work, or at least I try. And this system was to be used at different parts of the Dutch government. So there's regional governments and there's the national government, and they are all very much divided, but they were supposed to start using this application. And supposedly it's a big, important project. There was a lot of European funding based on it. It was supposed to work fast, and it was incredibly late. So I don't know, it's probably with you guys the same. You'll see this, that even though in government they say it's important, it still takes a lot of time and doesn't get any priority. So what this started like when I got there, they asked me over, they said, well, we would like to approach this in an agile way, in a more Scrum-like way. They wanted to use Scrum, which is okay for me. They said, well, what we have is we have a lot of large work packages. So we have a document that's been written that's about this thick, and it says what the people should do for the next 6 months. And we divided it up. They said, well, we divided it up into user stories, 18 pages apiece. Well, it's better than nothing. And they would give it to the team, and the team would start working on it and deliver it late. So this wasn't workable at all. The interesting thing is that this team was important project, right? Part-time allocated, 2 days a week. Very important project. So this is a little bit of what it looks like. I'm sorry, I don't have the Legos Håkan does, so I have to draw my own slides. So we had the Scrum Master who I would be coaching, and he would work with a team of about six people, coincidentally, a tester, a developer, an analyst, another developer, and they would work together, and they would work on a bunch of different things. There would be a whole bunch of product owners delegated from the ministries, and they would say, well, this is what we need, this is what we like, this is what we don't like. That's actually what they were supposed to do. They would put it on what we call the project backlog, but we called it a project, that was the document. So, work in progress. And then those were other people than the people actually working with the customer. And the customer were different people from the same ministries. So there was a weird connection there, but it kind of worked out. So this was the work package. The developers and testers were from a third party. So they weren't part of the own organization. They were just hired. The customers were all at different locations, and they were the actual people using it, and the other people were the people making decisions. So there was quite some, I don't know, communication problems. So what I did is when I discussed this with the Scrum Master and the person who hired me, I said, well, how do you want to do this? Because we all recognized that to be able to actually pull this off, we needed to involve the whole organization. And immediately we knew that that wasn't going to work. So we started out very small, and we said, well, let's see if we can make the teamwork smooth, make them work predictably, and make sure that we increase their control capability. I'll tell you later what that is and how it works. So we'll get the development process to work, and Scrum would be a useful tool for them, so let's do that. We'll make policies explicit, and we'll see if we can start doing something where the people who will actually be using it, not the people making decisions, but the people who will actually be using it, are getting more involved in the process. So we were taking a very small part of the entire workflow. And then we said, well, after that, we'll grow it to a bigger part and see if we can influence the external control capability a little bit more. There was an ops teams that was overworked. The project portfolio was a mess. There were a bunch of teams working for this application on different projects, so we thought we had to structure it at some point, but not at first. So a little bit about control capability. So this is where the book stuff comes in. So control capability is basically all the tools a person has to solve tasks at hand, and that can be a lot of things. So within control capability, there's skills, there's knowledge, stuff you just learn from experience, but there's also your network. How are you able to use your connections within an organization or outside an organization? What's your status? And power? How likely are people to do something if you tell them to do it? That all makes that you can solve more or less stuff in an organization. So the bigger your control capability is, the more problems you can fix within your own little bubble. So if you look at an organization, there's a whole bunch of nodes, and a node can be both a person or it can be a team or something. And there's a lot of exchanges going on. There's a relationship between those. And those relationships will have conflicting demands. So for instance, if I work as a consultant. So I have a client I work for right now, 5 days a week, full-time assignment. But I have also an internal stakeholder within our own organization that asked me to do training 1 day a week. And I have a salesperson who is another stakeholder within my company who asked me to write articles, stuff to get new jobs in there. So I have more than 5 days of work in 1 week, and they all want me to do that. So the conflicting demands make sure that I get into trouble at some point because I have to prioritize, I have to do stuff to make sure it works. And the amount of control capability I have determines whether I am able to solve those problems. So how capable am I allowed? Is it okay if I prioritize those things? Is it okay if I say, well, then let's not do 1 day of consulting, but do a day of coaching in this week, and then maybe something extra next week and see how that works out, and then I'll spend my lunchtime working on a proposal or something, stuff like that. So that's your control capability. And the control capability is very important in teams. So in any form of agile working, you want to have as much control capability with the teams or within the whole flow of the organization. And what you'll see is that every node in this network has a relationship to many others. And it can be siloed, like we have an analyst team, we have a development team, and we have a test team. We didn't have that in this case. We had them all in the same room, which was nice. But they're all there. And the thing is, in a bureaucracy, and the government organization I was working at was very much a bureaucracy in this case. In a bureaucracy, there's a bunch of relationships between nodes that are being managed by other people. So you are at the receiving end of one of these things and you don't know why you get work, or you get told that you will get work, or you will get told to deliver something. So one of the things in a bureaucracy which was good to know, and it only occurred to me later that was what was happening to me, is that what a bureaucracy will do is they will invent more rules if they feel out of control. So instead of letting go or fixing stuff, they say, well, apparently we can't control it yet, so we need more rules to control it more, and then more and more and more and more. And the more people you put in there, the bigger the chance that relationships are being managed that you don't see yourself. So control capability has two sides to it. So there's the internal control capability, which basically means I am able to solve any problem or conflict within my own node. That's basically what Scrum does. Scrum increases internal control capability. So it says we'll put a team together, and we'll put the right people in the room, and by doing that, we'll make sure that they have everybody in the room to solve the problem, in theory. The external capability is the capability to solve problems that occur outside of your own node. So say I work in an organization and my sales manager asks me to write a proposal for a new client, but he doesn't give me all the information I need, or he gives me the wrong information I need. My external control capability is to what extent I'm capable of approaching the client and asking more questions to fix the problem and to adjust my way of working based on the stuff he missed or the stuff he didn't do. So I will fix problems that are not my fault. So in this case, we started working on the internal capability, and then later on the external, because the external is much harder to change. For internal control capability to work, there's something that's very important, and that's motivated responsibility. And motivated responsibility is, you probably all know this. There's a whole bunch of books about this, video clips online, on internet about it, and it says what it is, it's the active willingness to take responsibility for your work. So how much fun do you actually have going to work? And it's divided into three different things. And the three different things are that you should be able to choose what you're doing. You should be able to actually want to do it and to feel like you have a purpose when you're doing it. So this sounds, it's not exactly the same, but who saw the Drive clip online? Oh, not that many people. Look it up online on YouTube. Daniel Pink's Drive. It talks about more or less the same thing. And it talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, which is basically along the lines. It's a little bit different, but it'll get you there. So this is what you want: motivated responsibility in your teams, right? So that's what we wanted to have, which is a little bit harder if the team is external. So the team is a third-party supplier that has entirely different goals than the organization it's working in. But still, you want to get that feeling of responsibility going, and you should have them be able to do whatever they think is necessary to get the job done. Here's what happens if you have limited control capability, but you do have a lot of motivated responsibility. People will get frustrated because they want to solve a problem, they want to fix stuff, they feel like they should be going in a certain direction, but they can't. They're not allowed. Welcome in a bureaucracy. So it's good to know that if you have this, thinking that you can actually radically change control capability overnight is nearly impossible. It doesn't work. So that's the reason why I chose to work with this team from a small team first and then start to working outwards from there. Because throwing this around, it just doesn't work. There's too much resistance, there's too much frustration, people will lose sight of what's important to them, to lose sight of what's actually, what they've started building from whenever they started working. So this should be something that is fairly evolutionary. So a month in, maybe 6 weeks in, here's what we did. So we had the Scrum team working a little bit. They made a board, they built their own stuff, they started delivering software, they started delivering in sprints. So we pretty much got the Scrum team in order, and we got them to work together. They were actually doing stand-up every day that they were working on a project, 2 days a week, but it still worked. They gathered around, and I wasn't there every time they would do a stand-up, so I started getting emails from people, where were you? I always liked that. That means that at least they missed me. It's nice to be missed, sometimes. So that was a small step, and this was quite an easy step to be taken. Team felt more in charge. We increased their internal control capability. So then there was the next problem, the big document. So how would we make sense of that? Because what we had is we got our internal structure in the team kind of working, but what we got in was still too big. It was still garbage. So garbage in is garbage out, so still delivering the wrong thing. Here's what we know about large work items. So the larger the work item, the bigger the risks, and most of the time, the more complex it is as well. So those two are very closely related. And what we figured out quite early on, and what you guys probably will know, is that the bigger the item it is, the more stuff is in there that will never be used anyway. It's in there because somebody asked for it because it sounded fun. And nobody asked the question, why do you actually use it? What are you actually trying to accomplish with it? How are you going to prove to me later that what you have asked for now is actually making you money? And the bigger your tasks get, the more stuff is in there that won't ever be used. So what we did is we used story mapping. And Jeff Patton describes it as a way of making your backlog two-dimensional. So it's not just a list, maybe it's three-dimensional then. Anyway, it typically is a list. It's a single file list, and what you actually want to do is you want to look at them closer and see what the parts are that you need and that you don't need. So I stole this example. We used to use the Mona Lisa for this. I stole this example from Spotify, because they are much better at making an example like that. Basically what happens is that on the horizontal axis, you put everything you need to make it work. So, and you can actually put it out in time. So the steps that you need to do first are the steps that you wanna build first and are the first things you need. So in this case, if we want to go from A to B, you can use a skateboard, which would be the minimum amount that you will actually need to transport you from A to B. And then it would make sense to build wheels, steering, brakes, engine. Well, lights doesn't, engine doesn't make sense anyway for a skateboard either. So on the top, it's like, it's fully developed with all the features that you would need in it. On the vertical axis, you put all the stuff that you need to make it more awesome, to make it better, to make it look more shiny. A customer will always ask you for the stuff that's very, very much down here. Down, whoa, cool. Down here. If you're going to go from A to B, all clients will ask for a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. And they can actually get it if they would be certain that that would make them back their money, and that would be the best way to go from A to B. Well, it could be the best way, but it certainly is, well, one of the most expensive ways. So what you do here is you look at all the stuff you would need and all the stuff that you would be able to scratch from the whole example, and then you say, all right, so the backbone of the application would be the wheels and the steering and the brakes and the engine and the lights. And to actually make it work and make this walk, we would need just a skateboard. And Jeff Patton calls it the walking skeleton. And the walking skeleton is the minimal amount of stuff you need to build to make sure that you can sell it or test your assumptions. about if people will actually buy it. So this is what we did. So we took the whole thick document and we started story mapping. So we started writing down all the 18-page user stories and we started writing them down on Post-its. Well, actually just the title, because that would fit. 18 pages on a Post-it would be quite a lot. And we started putting them up on the board. This is our first try. Unfortunately, I don't have the picture of the bigger map because this one started to evolve. Every sprint we did, the team got more aware and the product owners got more aware that every story that was in there could be split up in like 7 or 8 different stories that would still give them functionality they would need, would still give them value that they actually needed, but would be able to split out in time and possibly be delivered later. So what we put up here is the functions of the application. We put them on top. We wrote them down on green Post-its. We wrote all the priorities. We started just with the priorities first, because the priorities were easy. They said, well, we need the application anyway, and we couldn't split it into, all right, so what's the bare minimum? And so I started with them. I said, all right, so what do you need first? What's the part you need first? What's the priority? You only have 6 weeks. What should we build? Okay, so that's that part. And then all the stories and tasks that we should work on were put up here. And what this did is it was very helpful. So using story mapping was really helpful in splitting all the tasks and creating a whole bunch of awareness about what we were actually building. The team got more involved, people around it got more involved. We got a lot of attention to the product, to the project. This board was in a meeting room. This is government. We were in a large room. We weren't allowed to put anything up on walls. So if people tell me you're not allowed to put anything up on walls, I'm a consultant, I'll do it anyway. So we put it up on Thursday. I got back on Monday, it was gone. All right, might be coincidence. Scrum Master told me, told you so. I'm like, all right, so no problem. We made a picture, let's put it back up, see what happens. Wednesday, gone. So we were really not allowed to put anything back up on the walls. So we put it up in a meeting room because that was the only place that had a whiteboard that we could actually use. And the meeting room was reserved by a whole bunch of people. So they would just walk in and out while we were doing stuff there. And we also put our policies and definitions of done, put them next to the board. And that created a lot of awareness with people saying, oh, all right, so this is what you're doing, this is what you're working on. Hey, that's interesting, you're not building anything that you can actually deliver. That's funny, and we said, no, that's correct, because we're stopped because we're not able to control what the ops team is doing. They're like, that doesn't make any sense. So we created a lot of awareness just by putting it up there. And that really helped us to accelerate the transition and the change. So what we did in the last, I don't know how many years, is we made developing stuff and developing software incredibly hard and incredibly complicated. So in the old days, what the basic flow is still somebody has an idea somewhere, and then something happens. And then something is realized and ready to sell, right? So this should apply to most stuff. I'm not a manufacturing guru, but I think this would apply there as well, right? So I told you about the bureaucracy. So they said, well, what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if for some reason in the part where something happens, we don't know what happens, but something happens, something else goes wrong and we're not able to deliver an actual product. What do we do then? So the typical bureaucratic response is to split the tasks, split the activities, and put more control measures on it. So we'll put a manager there. We'll put some extra reporting there because reporting is very important. And we'll make it much harder for people to screw up, right? So split it up. Make sure that people have less complicated jobs to do, and it's harder for them to screw it up. Okay. So what happens if you do this is you're creating more nodes. You're instead of reducing the nodes, you're creating more and more and more and more in an organization. And the problem you have when you're doing that is that the bigger picture, the view of the bigger picture inside the node gets lost. So people will stop actually knowing what they're working on and who they're building it for and who they're actually developing stuff for. But also the ability to fix a problem within their own node goes down. So if something happens in, say, let's say a testing node, people will work there, but they don't have the capability to fix what they're doing because they're specifically told how to do their job. So you kill motivation, you kill creativity, and that will get worse and worse and worse because people will keep screwing up because they don't know what to do, they don't get it, they don't understand, and that makes sense. They cut up the task and it gets even worse. But the other thing is, so if you would look at all the nodes in a long line, it's never a long line, but if you would put them in a long line, it's very hard to fix a problem that happens 2 nodes before you. So the problem, me and my sales manager, he sends me a message, could you please write a proposal for this and that and that and that. The more people that get in between there, the harder for me it is to find out where the information got lost and fix it at that same point. So that will make sure that I spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time figuring out where the problem occurred, what was needed to fix it, and to actually control the situation again and make sure that I don't screw up in the next, towards the next node. So this makes that I will start wasting a lot of time because I have to meet a lot of people, and I waste a lot of other people's time as well. Reducing the amount of time we actually spend working on software. Well, you've seen Håkon's talk. So what this does, it reduces the flow efficiency. So we get less efficient every time this happens, just because there's more work, more errors, stuff like that. So that's exactly what you don't want to happen. So therefore, it makes sense to arrange the work and the process around what it makes sense to arrange around what the work needs instead of what the people can do. Because you can teach a whole bunch of new people to do something, but if it doesn't make sense to do that actual task, you're just creating more overhead, more reporting, more need for meetings, control stuff like that. If you organize around the work and around what the work needs to actually go from being a light bulb to ending up as a present, you will reduce the amount of nodes and therefore increasing the control capability of your organization and the people in there. So back to the case study. What I've did until now, if you would look at the process, was focus on the very last part. So we focused on working with the Scrum team, changing the way of working there, having them collaborate and see what happened. But this is a very local optimization, but it was needed to create awareness in the organization that we're doing something else than they would typically do. So we had a happy team. The people were actually engaged. They really liked it. They really liked the way of working, which I always very much like when working with a third party. I'm always a third party, but to me, third parties working in an organization are always a little bit suspicious because they are there for a different reason than that they actually want to be at the company that they're working their assignment. So having them be engaged and having fun at the work they're doing and feeling like they're actually making a difference within the organization is always a very good thing. I really like that. I really like seeing that. So with this team as well, we asked them to say, how happy are you guys? Do you really like it? What should we improve? They were like, no, we are very happy. We did regular retrospectives, so we made sure that any changes we could do were would be verified, would be tested, would be seen what we could actually improve on it or change. And we actually got to a point where user stories were small enough for a 2-week sprint, which was awesome. So if you look at the board, there's a blue post-it over there. What it says on the post-it, you won't be able to read it, not just because it's Dutch, but you won't be able to read it. It says, this is where we expect to be at the end of this sprint. So they said, well, we'd probably be able to do these items, maybe this one too. That was when we started. That was the beginning. Which was okay, we had to fix it. This is when we started, 4 to 5 weeks, and after 3 months, this is what the board looked like. So we got a lot further, we got a lot of more stories done. We got about the same amount of work done, but it felt like more because we got to write more post-its. And the board changed as well. We went from having them still write on the board, to a much neater board. So I put here smell. Do any of you guys know what the smell is here? What happens if people keep writing on the board? What's going on in the organization? So what it says is that if you, I figured this out after I saw it at a couple different clients. If people start writing on their task board, if they still use it as a whiteboard, they don't see the value of the actual board. You knew and you didn't say it. Oh, okay, that's okay. So that's one of the upsides of using an actual whiteboard as a task board or as a board to put your work on, because it really makes me see that if they start writing on it, we have some work to do within the team and within the team about sharing what we're visualizing for and what we're actually using them for, and not just to make sure that the post-it salespeople are very happy. And the interesting thing is you can actually see it. When boards get neater, people start to care more about it. So that's always my case for straight lines on a board. Straight lines make people work better at around a board just because they care. The same process they wrote down here, because it was their workflow. They wrote it down on a A3 paper. They drew it, did it in Visio or something, and put it up on the board. So they still needed it. They still had it visible, but it showed that they were getting much more aware that the board was for something else than drawing stuff on it. Okay. So here's what we did now up to the before it got to the team to actually start developing. So we had the large work package. We still kept getting one of those, and we would cut them up into user stories, prioritize them on a story map, and then eventually put them back on a backlog where we prioritize them and start working on them from there. And we had 3 month releases, which was still a long time, but we couldn't change that. And we started prioritizing in that way. So let's see what we can deliver in the first month, and then let's see what we can do in the second month, and then third month, and then actually go to production. So I told you that we already fixed some of the nodes with introducing Scrum as a way of developing the software, but we still had a very limited external control capability. We were still unable to fix the fact that most of the work we got into the system was broken, was not in the right way. So this is why we said, all right, so this is the moment we should either go big or just stop trying to fix this and accept that this is a bureaucratic organization and it'll never work. Well, it'll never work. I don't like it'll never work, so we had to try it anyway. So here's the things we saw. The people were still working 2 days a week on this project. Okay. And there was no portfolio priority, and the op teams was overworked. The interesting thing, though, is that the project looked like this to us, But when we started looking closer, there was a whole bunch of different work being thrown into the teams, because I asked them, I said, why are you only working for 2 days a week? And they were like, well, we kind of don't have more time to work on it because we have so many other projects. Okay, thanks. So the really funny thing about this was the other project was done by the same people. The exact same people. So we work on my project on Tuesday and Thursday, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday we'll work on a different project. The actual project was on the back of this board. I don't have a picture on it. I've seen people walk in for the stand-up, and they would do the stand-up in front of the board and then do the whole talk, and then a different project manager would walk in. He would grab the board, turn it around, and they'd be like, all right, so next stand-up. Like, holy... So that was something we felt like we really needed to fix. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to go from here to there. So we wanted to get all the, because it was also the same application. It didn't make any sense at all, but it's government, so political stuff and all that. So we wanted to go to, instead of having it thrown directly into the team, make sure that it got prioritized and got the ready process better, so that all the stuff we would build would actually make much more sense and would be much more valuable to the end customer, because it was still the same project. We actually found bugs on our days from the project on the other days. So they were fixing it anyway, and they were spending their time anyway, but nobody wanted to know. And this is actually where the interesting stuff happens. So the whole make sure the team starts to work nicely and stuff, that works nicely. That's fun. But this is where the interesting stuff happens. So at some point, I actually got a phone call from one of the managers, and he said, I haven't heard anything from your project, and that doesn't feel right. So I walked up to the Scrum Master, and it was the manager of the Scrum Master. I walked up to him and said, well, here's an interesting thing. I just got a phone call from your manager saying that they don't hear anything about us and they don't think is right. I said, what's going on? He says, well, it's quite normal here that projects don't work, and they call her and tell her that it doesn't work. But we got it figured out pretty well. So we had our product owners were happy, the team was happy, nobody was complaining, and still it didn't feel right. So big lesson number one for me: relationships can exist without you knowing it. There was a relationship here that I had with this manager that I didn't know existed. So she was looking at me for coaching the project, and even though we were doing good, we completely forgot about her. I assumed that it would work itself out, that she would be so close to the Scrum Master and they would talk like every week or every 2 weeks. I thought they would share information, how well we were doing and stuff like that. There was a relationship here with me. I was supposed to do that. I didn't do that. And the other lesson, there's always something political going on in government. So the problem here was, and that's the biggest problem in this project, and that's why we are still struggling up to the point as where I've stopped sharing information about the project. We're still there. We're still unable to make the big leap outside, because she is one of the managers in a steering committee for all the other projects. All the other projects are failing. This one's not failing, and that's the one she isn't part of. But she is in charge. So that's kind of not a good thing for her. So now all of a sudden our project structure is not right. We're not doing the right stuff. The stuff isn't working the way it should be. We're not complying with any of the rules and regulations within the organization. So that's a big problem. So that's too bad. It's interesting though, if you look at it from a theoretical perspective. There was an external control capability that I completely missed. So to round up, I think I have 2 more minutes, right? Should be 1.5. Okay, so my advice, start small. The whole thing of we are a large organization, so we should instantaneously start with a large way of approaching agile methods doesn't work. It just doesn't. People need to want to change, and that just takes time. So grow it and then show them that it works, and then keep going. Don't forget about people that you think aren't important at first. You're growing it, so they will be important at some point. Start involving them. The really hard part is knowing which people to involve and which people not to involve. And it's very important to optimize the team and make sure that it works. But optimizing the stuff before them and looking at the whole process and the whole workflow as a whole picture is much more important. If you don't fix that, you're sub-optimizing, and it's fun. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't get you any real successes. All right, that's my story. Thank you very much.